What is going on, YouTube? It is your boy, Faithful to God. And today I am joined with my friend Abu, and we're going to be discussing Israeli geneticist Aaron Elhaik and our friends We Woke Now and Benaya Israel, our common friends, friends that have been featured quite extensively on this channel, and their misunderstanding of DNA and also Aaron Elhaik's website. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce. I have my friend introduce himself. Go ahead, Abu. Say hello to the audience.
Good afternoon to everybody. I'm calling in from Manhattan, New York City. It's a fine Thursday afternoon.
Oh yeah, it's a fine day to have a discussion on DNA, man.
Mhm.
So let's go ahead and just give people just a sample of what we're going to be discussing, if you could, like
Sure.
a
If,
little bit
if
of
I
an
could just sort of
introduction.
introduce
Yeah.
the topic, give it a little bit of background, right? First, let me say that this is a video that's like long overdue, as your channel, Faithful's channel, has previously covered how Kelly Richardson and Benaya Israel attempted to appeal to and promote Eran Elhaik's platform. And, we covered how that blew up in their faces. But one thing we haven't covered until today is how they subsequently lost faith in Elhaik and his platform and tried to polemicize against him. If I could say one other thing, it needs to be noted that like the definitive handling of this topic was already carried out by the Yap Gang in a marathon video over at the Genesis 49ers channel late last summer, titled "We Woke Now versus Eran Elhaik Jewish DNA Controversy: Yap Gang Domain Expansion." And we'll put a link to that in the video description. That's a very long video though, because it's like a thorough point-by-point dismantling of Kelly and Benayah's main video against the Elhaik. But in this video, we're going to offer a much shorter, much more succinct treatment of the subject. And if I could give the background now, from late 2022 and on through the summer of 2023, the We Woke Now channel, i.e. Kelly Richardson's channel, and Benaya Israel, as well as Will Brown's Boom Church panel, and perhaps to like a lesser extent Teo Ministries, they were all promoting Elhaik's Ancient DNA Origins platform, which more recently changed its name to Ancient DNA Hub. Now, the reason that those guys liked why they liked Elhaik's platform is because Elhaik was pretty explicit about his position that Ashkenazi Jews fail to meet his standard for Israelite. So, that crowd of Israelites who were promoting Elhaik's platform, they seem to have naively thought that if Ashkenazim fail to meet Elhaik's standard, then that must mean that they win by default, right? But so what we had pointed out, Faithful and I had pointed out in previous videos, which again, we'll put in the video description after the show, Ashkenazim were still faring better than many African Americans on Elhaik's platform, significantly
Oh
better in many
yeah.
instances,
Oh yeah.
and especially better than guys like Kelly Richardson and his cousin Will Brown. And when we first pointed that out, their response was silence. But eventually, they reached the point where they felt forced to admit that this was going on. And what we're going to cover is their reaction, their polemic against Elhaik, their attempts to throw Elhaik under the bus after promoting his platform.
Right. And for those who are interested, we'll have links to our previous discussion regarding Elhaik's website. We've actually discussed it in two previous live streams, and those will be in the description of the video.
Mm-hmm.
If we could, though, just briefly, um, so people can get an idea for those who haven't watched the videos. Um, what were Ashkenazi typically getting on Elhaik's website versus what African Americans were generally getting?
Okay. So African Americans, of course, are diverse, but Ashkenazim on average were hitting somewhere, 30% or more on in the Israelite category on Elhaik's platform. Meanwhile, Kelly Richardson, Will Brown, they were getting somewhere around 0% Israelite. I think Will Brown got 0. Kelly got a positive number, which was below 1%. And we're going to see that. And so the reason why this was significant is because it faced them with a conundrum, right? On the one hand, if Ashkenazim are to be disqualified for failing to meet Elhaik standard, which is an extremely strict standard, then by the same token, African Americans who fare even worse than Ashkenazim do should also be disqualified. And conversely, if those little minuscule scores that people like Kelly got are sufficient to classify them as Israelites, then by the same token, it should be sufficient to classify Ashkenazim. And so they didn't want to do either of that, and that's why they reached the point where they tried to just, sort of attack the platform that they previously promoted.
Right. Conveniently. Conveniently. But we'll
Mm-hmm.
get into that in this video. So if we could, um, I think right now would be the perfect time to show one of the first clips. I
Yes.
believe this is Kelly, showing fleeting glimpses,
Mm.
of his correspondence with Elhaik, right? If you could kind of give people a little bit of a overlay while we prepare to show them the video clip.
Yeah. So, like, we're gonna try to set the tone with this clip that we're about to show. It's just a fun little clip, and then we'll show one other fun clip, and then we'll get into like the serious clips. But basically, the good doctor Kelly Richardson, he had a correspondence with Elhaik, an email correspondence, and he showed like a little tiny excerpt of that, right? A couple of tiny excerpts throughout his video, right? He alluded to a longer email correspondence with Elhaik, but unfortunately, he only showed these like small portions rather than the whole correspondence. And that alone is funny because, obviously, for those who know Kelly, there's trust issues with his handling of various topics. So it leaves one to wonder what he's hiding by not showing the full correspondence. But this is more of the same. But one of the things that he showed is pretty funny, and it's going to set the tone for this entire video, I think. So that's what the first clip is.
So this was his response to what I wrote him back. He didn't respond with a very lengthy response. This is all he said. I am sorry that you're still confused. I've answered all your questions about our calculations. I hope that I guess he said, I hope that with time you will find more answers. So you want to say I'm still confused?
All right.
Yeah.
So
And
that was excellent.
And very confused he is.
Oh, I think that's going to become clear as the show goes on. So that was excellent.
Yeah.
Basically, I wanted to show that to say that one thing that Kelly shared is that Eran Elhaik himself told the good doctor that he's confused on this topic. And, that's going to be the theme of this video. Kelly and Benaya are both confused regarding DNA and the various things that they reach for. And we're going to look at a few different clips and offer some commentary on a few different arguments. But the common thread is going to be their confusion.
By the way, the confusion of faces.
Yeah.
Hey, I felt like throwing that one in there, man. It's been a while since I've thrown a little jab their way, but well, on that note, I think we should go ahead and check out the second clip. Now, if you could give people an overlay of the second clip.
Well, just to say this, what you were basically, this is going to be super quick. It's less than 30 seconds long, but it's Kelly letting slip that he wasn't aware of haplogroup T, which is, fairly major haplogroup. And it's also comes up a lot in discussions about, ancient Levantine samples and ancient Semites. There's a gentleman from How Music who has haplogroup T and has, quite a few interesting arguments on that topic. So for Kelly to let slip that he wasn't familiar with haplogroup T until he started looking at Elhaik's platform, it says something about how green he is on this topic. So let's play it, and then we'll discuss it very briefly, and then we'll move on to the more serious clips. Just for the record, I didn't hear anything.
Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. That was my mistake. All right, let me actually play that one more time. All right, give me a second. And I do apologize. I was gonna say, StreamYard has changed the way that one plays. I guess they changed the. Anyways, I'll go ahead and play it now. Here it is.
let's go into the view my results, right? When I click on Judah, let's see what it says. So if we scroll down, right, and I'm going to highlight some additional things on it, but I just want to focus on Judah, right? So you notice here, it shows 6 individuals, right? So what it says here, NECA, it has me at 27% for this person, 16% for this person, and so forth, right? And so if I click on NECA, right, and it says learn more. So when you click on NECA, you know, so when you look at this on the surface, it's like, okay, all right, I see where you're going at here. This is one of the key things that stood out too. It says Israelite, 50%, Neolithic Southeast Africa, 43%. Eli Yashiv. All right, let's see what it says here. All right, you scroll down, pretty much it's giving you 59%, right? Israelite, 37% Neolithic Southeast Africans. Israelites, 74% Neolithic Southeast African, 11%. So each one of the individuals we clicked on, it seemed to be 60% and higher for Israelites. And notice what it says here. Neolithic Southeast Africans, 96.2%. Israelites, 0.6%. What is the measure? That measure makes absolutely no sense. If we clicked on each individual, and each individual says that on an average was 60% Israel, and it says that my DNA matched these individuals, right? How is it just 0.6%? All right, that was one of my questions. All right.
All right, if we could pause that there. All right.
Oh boy.
So we played the third clip instead of the second clip. That's fine. What I want to say. Really quick,
I'm sorry. So
no,
I
it's
must
no
have
problem.
skipped.
I guess
Actually, no, I can always go back to the. My apologies. I did skip ahead a little bit too much. It was the second clip. My apologies. That's all right. You know.
This was just for fun.
Yeah. And so this is the second clip. My apologies for that. And this was the one where he says he doesn't know what haplogroup T, or that he hasn't heard of haplogroup T, right?
Precisely.
Yeah. 50. And family, look at this haplogroup. You have T1. Now, I've heard of J. I've heard of course, we all know E. We know we've heard of R. You heard of I, but I never heard of T. Like, what is T? You know what I mean?
All right. So we just wanted to show that for fun. Because I'm echoing. I think we need to switch your mic.
Right, there it is. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
So we wanted to show that for fun because think about this. He's just learned about haplogroup T when he made that video. Yeah. And yet he's that unfamiliar with genetics, and yet he's going to lecture and correct the geneticist, the professional geneticist at on
right, which is precisely what the third clip was. So we skipped ahead a little bit, but we'll tie it together and explain to you guys that essentially what he was doing in the third clip was critiquing the professional, the actual professional, in this case, Aaron Elhaik, who is the Israeli geneticist. And in the second clip, the one that we played, you can tell that Kelly isn't even familiar with haplogroups. Like he doesn't even know that there was a haplogroup T. Now, anybody that knows even a little bit about genetics knows that there are various haplogroups. T happens to be one of them. So for a guy who isn't even aware of what haplogroups are, what different haplogroups are or aren't, for him to critique a professional is kind of like almost it's outlandish. It's insane.
Mm-hmm. So regarding that third clip that we showed, so since we already showed it, we'll give the description of it. Basically, he was showing the results of samples that he matched with, and then he showed his own results. And so for people who rewind, you'll see there's a certain point where it says, Kelly's results on the left of the screen. And here's the thing. He was pointing out that, there it is, Kelly's results. So here's the thing. The results that he matched with, they would have significant amounts of Neolithic Southeast African. And then they would also have significant amounts of Israelite, right? They would score high in the Israelite categories. That's the samples. Kelly got less than 1% in the Israelite category. And so Kelly was arguing if he's connected to these samples and they scored high in the Israelite category, then he should score high in the Israelite category. And with that, can you show the slide A,
Yes.
which will give us a basic layout of what Kelly's argument is here, right? We're going to talk about the structure of Kelly's reasoning and why it's flawed. So we'll have this in a moment. But basically, again, his argument...
Horribly flawed, yeah.
Yeah, his argument is he was connecting with these samples. They have a high Israelite rating, and so or high score for Israelite, and therefore he should have a similar score for Israelite. And he literally said, this doesn't make any sense. But it does make sense. It's just Kelly is this unfamiliar with genetics, and it's shockingly so. And
it's
we're going to see the same thing from Benaya. Okay, so here's go ahead. Here's the good doctor's basic argument, right?
Yeah.
His reasoning moves like this. Premise 1, his DNA overlapped with the DNA of certain samples. Premise 2, those samples were classified as having high amounts of Israelite admixture. And therefore, conclusion, therefore, he should also be classified as having high amounts of Israelite admixture. That's his reasoning. Now, why is this flawed? I'm going to give a couple of analogies. One will be merely hypothetical. The other one will be a real-world analogy. So the real-world analogy from my own life, I've mentioned this on other shows, and Faithful knows this about me. An interesting fact about my family is my father and his brothers grew up in Newark, New Jersey in the 50s, right? At a time when Newark was very Sicilian. There was a lot of Sicilians in Newark, New Jersey in the 50s. And it just so happens that every single one of my father's brothers wound up marrying and having children with a Sicilian woman. That happened with every single one of my father's brothers. My father was the only son in his line of siblings that didn't get with a Sicilian woman, right? Now, why is that significant? That's significant because on my father's side of the family, I have a whole bunch of first cousins who are like half Sicilian. I, on the other hand, get no amount of Sicilian admixture like in 23andMe and other stuff like that, right? So following Kelly's logic, Kelly's argument would basically amount to me saying, well, I have cousins who are 50% Sicilian, therefore I should have a high amount of Sicilian admixture. But that's a ridiculous argument, right? You can share something with an individual without sharing everything with that individual. Can you show the second slide? This is where the hypothetical analogy will come in.
Let me actually do that real quick.
Mm-hmm. You might be able to just click over rather than go down and get it. You can click to the right and the left.
Yep, I have it right here. Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Yep.
All right, so here's a hypothetical analogy. This is a thought experiment. Notice, I want to make sure that it's clear that hypothetical analogy is underlined in red. I'm not making an actual claim about Kelly's family. This is just a thought experiment. So in our thought experiment, imagine if it turned out that one of Kelly's uncles had been with a Chinese woman and had a child with her, right?
Right.
So in that hypothetical scenario, in that thought experiment, we could reframe Kelly's argument like this. Premise 1, Kelly's DNA overlaps with the DNA of his first cousin, who's half Chinese. Premise 2, that first cousin has a high amount of Chinese admixture. In conclusion, therefore, Kelly should also have a high amount of Chinese admixture. It's a ridiculous argument. Anyone who gives it a minute of thought should realize this is ridiculous. Yet this is basically the structure of Kelly's argument, where he's trying to say, well, these samples I connected to had a lot of Israelite admixture. How come I'm not getting a high rating for Israelite? And the reason why is because he's connecting on something else. He was connecting in that Neolithic Southeast African category. But somehow Kelly missed this. And later on, we're going to see Benaya make the exact same. And it's preposterous. But I want to say this. One thing we'll say is that, and I'm going to say this several times, Elhaik was right. Kelly is confused. Right? And this is one example of Kelly's confusion.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Big time. All right. Hold on one second. And so, actually pull it up.
We're going to go to clip 4 now. Set up clip 4. And if you want, while you're doing that, I can talk about it. I'll prepare people for what they're about to see. So in this next clip, right, it's actually going to be a compilation of multiple clips, but Kelly is going to admit what we brought out and what the Yap Gang separately from us brought out, which is that Ashkenazim fare far better on Elhaik's platform than many African Americans do in general, and Kelly and his cousin in particular, right? But he's going to call this a red flag, right? Now, this compilation is going to run for a little over a minute, but Kelly's going to throw out a couple of arguments for why this is preposterous, why he thinks it's ridiculous that Ashkenazim are faring better than he is and better than Will Brown is, etc., right? Faring better than African Americans on average, right? So, good. I'll let you play the clip when you're able.
And I look at Ashkenazi Jews, it shows 38%. That is a major red flag. Why? Because going back to the Khazarian hypothesis, the major red flag is, okay, the information about the Ashkenazis. That's the thing that really drove me reaching out to him. All right. The total modern genetic similarity to Israel is 37%. Under the modern genetic similarity to Israel, in other words, the tribe of Judah, it shows the Ashkenazi Jews 38%. My question was, how is it possible when the forward says Ashkenazi Jews DNA is 90% Ashkenazi and 99% European? So his response was, this is more of a wishful thinking on the forward side. Whatever numbers they provide are not based on ancient DNA.
All right. So I'll wait for you to switch the mic.
All right, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to say anything, or you want me to tackle?
Oh man, yeah. This is absurd. No, but go ahead. No, please. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things to address there. First off, there's the thing with Khazars. He made a passing reference to the Khazars. Now, just to recap what was going on there, that's Kelly, where he's having his come to the truth moment, and he's finally coming to terms with and admitting and conceding what we had been saying all of last year and the year before, that Ashkenazim are faring better on Elhaik's platform. So now he's finally conceding that, but he's saying that's ridiculous because mumble something Khazars. He just sort of throws out the Khazars in a passing reference, and then the other thing he mentions is Ashkenazim being classified as European. He says the article in the forward does it, but if I'm not mistaken, the article was itself alluding to 23andMe, and Kelly has made a point about that in other videos where 23andMe classifies Ashkenazim as European. So we'll deal with both of that, but if I could say something really quickly about the Khazars, any connection to Khazars, right? Saying Khazars doesn't mean that Kelly and Benaya and Will Brown should automatically win by default. That's going to be a common theme here. But what we would say is this, even if there is some Khazar connection, perhaps the connection to the Khazars or any other Central Asian group, which is what was sort of used when, Elhaik made these allusions, perhaps that's negligible after all. Perhaps it's not enough to tip the balance in favor of people like Kelly, individuals like Kelly and his cousin Will Brown and so on, right? Or if one really wanted to run with that, perhaps those Central Asian populations would likewise score higher than Kelly and Will Brown and so forth in that Israelite category on Elhaik's platform, right? You see, the huge flaw here is Kelly simplistically thinking that he would just win by default if someone says Khazars. And even Elhaik, when you dig deep into Elhaik's endorsement of the Khazar theory, even he himself sort of alludes to how the trajectory of the Ashkenazi population is ancient Semites or ancient Levantine populations or ancient Mediterranean populations mixing with Romans, right? Like there's this sort of origin in Rome. It takes on a lot of Roman converts, and then that population moves to the territory of the Khazars or moves to Central Asia and then also absorbs Khazars and then moves into Eastern Europe. It's something along those lines. Even that would imply that there's a lot of there's going to be some Levantine admixture, and there's also going to be quite a bit of overall Mediterranean admixture, right? So that population that Elhaik has referred to, in theory, could still fare better on his platform than Kelly Richardson and others. And now it's not hypothetical anymore. That population is faring better. Now, before I get to the European thing, do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, I did want to say this, obviously, just to put it out there, that there have been several papers that have been put out dismissing the Khazarian hypothesis as far as how Elhaik has attempted to, propose it. And I understand that there are people who may disagree with that, but nevertheless, it is fair to point out that it has been addressed, and most geneticists do not agree with Elhaik's model. However, even if it turned out to be the case, let's say theoretically that somehow Elhaik was correct, and let's say all the geneticists grabbed a hold of his theory and ran with it, and that became the prevailing view, it would not follow that Kelly and Benayah's model now wins by default. Like somehow the mainstream community loses, therefore the the variety of Hebrew Israelism that Benaya and Kelly promote and endorse, that somehow wins by default. No, that's not how that works.
But that's what they assumed.
Yeah. But if you could, go ahead.
So now the European thing. That was the other thing that Kelly made a passing reference to, European. Oh, Ashkenazim. First off, it was a little silly. He said, Ashkenazim are like 99% Ashkenazim. Well, yeah, that's one would assume so. That's like saying X is majority X. But whatever the case, saying that Ashkenazim are European, like, for example, if you look on 23andMe, right? Let's say you have some Ashkenazi admixture, it's going to fall under the broad category of European, right? And Kelly thinks that's significant. He thinks that automatically should lower their results on Elhaik's platform. Here's the problem. Saying they're European is about as valuable as saying they're Asian or African, right? And the point of that analogy is Asia and Africa are both huge and diverse continents, right? And the same is basically true of Europe. Europe is also a diverse continent. So Sicilians and Maltese, i.e. people from Malta, are also going to score higher than Kelly on Elhaik's platform, yet Sicilians and Maltese are also classified as Europeans on Elhaik's platform. On 23andMe. So I wanted to share that to say, oh, well, this group is classified as European. That doesn't mean they're automatically going to fare worse than... Bear with me one second. That doesn't mean they're automatically going to fare worse than Kelly and others around him. So that's the important thing. Saying they're European is about as valuable as saying they're Asian or African. Africa's a diverse continent. Asia's a diverse continent, and so too is Europe. Yeah. And there are going to be certain Europeans or certain people classified as Europeans, especially those who are within Mediterranean populations, who are going to fare better than Kelly on Elhaik's platform.
You know what I find interesting, and so I don't know if right now would be the right time to bring out the two clips that I have in mind, but do you recall when they interviewed Elhaik and they were excited because they thought Elhaik somehow was endorsing their position? You recall, right?
Yeah.
So they're casting aspersions on Elhaik, like there's something suspicious, like there's something wrong, like there's something wrong with his website, or like he's somehow engaging in some sort of nefarious behavior. That seems to be what they're angling for these days, right? You know what's interesting? So again, I don't know if now would be the right time, but do you remember when Elhaik was promoting a lot of his own theories, like many of the theories that he holds to that they would disagree with? For example, the idea that the Levites didn't actually exist and then somehow they popped up later and they were really Egyptians, or the fact that he didn't believe that, the Roman exile of 70 AD actually took place. He was saying that in front of them. So would it be okay to bring out those clips?
Of course, it's your show. It's your show. Definitely. If you want to show it, show it.
I just wanted to show the audience the inconsistency of the gentlemen who are critiquing Elhaik, and we're going to see some more critiques in a little bit. But I wanted to point that out simply because it shows the it shows the fickle nature of these gentlemen. So I'll go ahead and play the clip about the Levites. So both of these are going to be about 2 minutes apiece. and you guys are going to see the way that they stayed silent. Now, again, no one here is saying that they needed to attack Elhaik or anything like that, especially in an interview. But no videos were done afterwards to quote unquote correct Elhaik back then, when they felt that Elhaik was actually endorsing their position with his website. But when they started taking the DNA test and they found out that their results didn't line up with their own, misguided theories about what they think their lineage actually is, and, Israelites and whatever the case may be, when they started realizing that Ashkenazim, the very people they're polemicizing against, were faring higher, now it became the case of you can't trust him. He's got an agenda. But when he was promoting his own agenda on their platform, they were, interestingly enough, silent. And I think that speaks volumes to the kind of to the nature of the individuals that we're discussing today. That when it's convenient, they'll turn the blind eye to certain things, and then when it's inconvenient, now they're going to play this game like there's this cabal or there's this group that's against them and all this other nonsense. But if I could, let me go ahead and play this clip, these two clips, I should say. So this is oh, I can't find it. Oh, here it is. So this is the first one. This is Elhaik's thoughts on Levites, and then we'll see his thoughts on 70 AD, both of which, both of his views contradicting what Benaya and Kelly hold to, from their Hebrew Israelite paradigm. So let's go ahead and play this, and give me a moment. Let me just adjust my audio. Here we go.
On the history of your family. So finding these high percentages is super exciting. And once again, the Levites were Egyptians. We know that because they had Egyptian name, Hophni and Pinchas, Moses. These are all Egyptian names. It is believed that they are the ones who brought the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And it is speculated they were a member of the Hapil, which is the member class of workers that were in Egypt, that at some point rose to prominence because there was a revolution in Egypt, and all of a sudden those Hapil became kings. Okay, and they ruled Egypt for a short while. When they were overthrown, they may have escaped from the new pharaohs. At that time, they could have arrived to Israel and bring with them the knowledge and the story and experience that they acquired in Egypt, and they become the Levites. As you all know, they did not have a territory. The name Levite in Hebrew means joining, something that is adjoining you. They were not a core member. They're not mentioned in the Deborah song, which was one of the oldest pieces of the Bible. They're not mentioned there, probably because they did not exist back then. They joined later on. Okay? So it's very
wanted to play that to show that he was essentially casting aspersions on the biblical narrative regarding the Levites, saying that they didn't exist back then. Of course, this is a belief that Kelly and Benaya would both fundamentally reject, and yet he's saying this in front of them, and they were essentially not just silent. And obviously, in the interview, you're going to be silent, but where were the videos critiquing him back then? Where was the outrage, the feigned outrage that they have now? Well, it wasn't there because they thought that they could use this guy. They thought that this guy somehow endorsed their pet theories. Mm-hmm. And he really didn't. When they started taking the DNA test and they found out that, according to his own platform, they're scoring even worse than Ashkenazis, now the feigned outrage comes out. Now it's like, oh, there's this conspiracy. But listen to the things that he was saying to them back then. Things that they would disagree with fundamentally from their own paradigm, from their own worldview. So this second clip will be where he basically tells them that he doesn't believe that there was a Roman exile, something that is at the core of most Hebrew Israelite ideology. All right, here we go. Let me play the audio, and you'll hear for yourselves where these men who are so outraged now were quiet as church mouses when this man was saying this stuff in front of them. No videos were made afterwards. No one is saying they needed to attack Elhaik. No one here endorses that kind of thing. But where were the videos critiquing him immediately after that interview? there were no videos. So let's go ahead and play it.
When some groups do compare it to the Italians and they find the similarity, they dismiss it by saying, oh yeah, that was the Roman exile. What Roman exile? There was no Roman exile. The Roman did not come to Israel in the year of Roman exile. What Roman exile? There was no Roman exile. The Roman did not come to Israel in the year of 70 to exile population because they needed people to pay taxes. That was far more important than taking how many people were exiled. They took people to serve on their ship. They did not come with trains. Okay. Right.
I think you guys get the point. I think that's enough. So one more thing too, just I know this is going to seem silly, but you know how Kelly and Benaya like to polemicize about certain imagery and different things, and let me actually let me just show this, because I don't know if people caught this in the first video clip when he was going into the whole explanation. It's on the screen. You'll be able to see it. This is from Elhaik's website. You'll notice that back then they were especially silent about things like this. Now they seem especially critical, and everything is a cabal, and everybody is out to get them. But where were the critiques? Where was the video critiquing, for example, the imagery on the tribe of Levi test cake? Notice
Santa
that
Claus from the
Santa Claus. Or what's the name of that guy? Kenny Rogers. Like, I mean, come on, man. Like, you cannot pretend like this was them in some sense. I would even say compromising, because they thought that the man in question, by dismissing the community that they constantly polemicize against, was somehow inadvertently giving them like the W, like by default.
Yeah.
And
it needs to be said over and over again. He was declaring that Ashkenazim failed to meet his standard, but it's a standard that they can't meet either. It's an incredibly strict standard. So yeah. So if I could just sum this up one more time. The Khazar, Kelly tried to say, something Khazars, it was so vague. He couldn't form an actual argument. But, doing this vague thing about Khazars doesn't change the fact that even if there is some Khazar or other Central Asian admixture amongst them, that doesn't mean that they're going to fare worse than Kelly did. What we can see in real time is they fared better. And as we're going to get into in a subsequent section, they also fare better on GEDMatch.
Right.
We'll get to that.
But before we get to that,
we're not going to it right now. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to recap, because before we jump in. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
So there was one more thing I wanted to show. Now, this was from the 2013 article from the Forward that discussed Eran Elhaik at around the time when the whole controversy about the Khazar theory being brought up again, especially by him. So here's what's interesting, right? And I imagine that Kelly and Benaya, if they're actually doing any kind of research, I mean, who knows, man? Who knows at this point? But I find this little section here. Hold on, let me actually. I find this little section humorous, because it's not like anything that we heard him say in those clips are like somehow brand new theories by Elhaik or Elhaik. I how do you pronounce his name? Elhaik?
I say Elhaik.
Elhaik. Yeah, like Elhaik wasn't promoting something brand new. This is these are his views, and yet they were especially quiet. It's not like they didn't know this. Anybody that's looked into this gentleman knows that these are his views, and they have long been his views. So this is from the Forward. This is from 2013, and you'll notice an interesting little section here, lest anybody think that these views are like brand new from him. You'll notice there it says, Elhaik, who doesn't believe that Moses, Aaron, or the 12 tribes of Israel ever existed, shrugs off such criticism. So the criticism about his theories about the Khazar theory. Yet here you have an example, right? The guy doesn't really believe in the biblical narrative and what it has to say. He takes more of the mainstream view of, anybody that's looked into the mainstream view knows, that the idea that the biblical text is untrustworthy and that kind of thing. Now, of course, we don't endorse that view, but this is more than likely Elhaik's view. Now, if it isn't, if he's changed his view, um, you know, to the relevant professor, if if he would like to comment and mention that his views have changed on this right here, what's highlighted, that's fine. But I just wanted to point out that what he was sharing in the clip is essentially what he believed back in 2013. It's not like he held to like this idea that the Bible is true and or in all of the things that it says. And it certainly wasn't the case that he was endorsing the belief of African Americans, you know, the Kelly and Benayah's view of African Americans somehow being Israelites as a people group, as a majority. That certainly wasn't his view back then. And I imagine it's not his view right now. So why did they think that somehow taking the DNA test was some, you know, did they think that by bringing him on, singing his praises, allowing him to espouse what he was going to espouse, that somehow he was going to like throw them a bone and give them like 30% or no, pardon me, like 40, 50% Israelite on his tests just to appease them? You know, I mean, his tests are what they are, right? If you take the test and you, if you could you briefly explain the tests to everybody so they can kind of understand how the tests work on his website for those who may be unfamiliar?
So funny enough, it's similar to the GEDMatch calculators. It has these broad categories, like, you know, I think there's a Yamnaya category. There's a, you know, Neolithic, Sub-Saharan African or South African. There's of course an Israelite category, and they're very broad categories. So, you know, you can fall into it. A part of your admixture, and it's important to note these are autosomal tests. They have nothing to do with haplogroups, even though, you know, for the sake of entertainment or curiosity or interest, Elhaik will also mention the haplogroups of his samples. Yeah. You know, your strict paternal line is irrelevant to your autosomal admixture. It's testing autosomal DNA. And that's the funny thing, you know, when the whole patrilineal approach fell apart for the Teo twins, they also briefly got on board with endorsing Elhaik's platform. And Elhaik's platform basically takes their attempts to appeal to autosomal DNA to its logical conclusion, and it still doesn't work out for them.
It doesn't work out for them, right? By the way, and if I could just take a brief intermission, because I see we have people coming in. If any of you feel led to donate anything to this channel, you know, it would be much appreciated. You're not obligated to donate anything, but if you would like to, the Cash App is at the bottom, or if you want to send a super chat, you can also do that as well. Again, nobody is obligated to give anything, but if you feel like it, then go right ahead. We'll be much obliged and appreciated to receive the donation over here. With that being said, though, I believe we are on clip number 4, right?
We're about to go to clip 4, but as we're leaving, clip 5. As we leave clip 4, I just want to say that, again, aside from the Khazar thing, Kelly was also saying, oh, but Ashkenazim are classified as Europeans. So I just want to say one more time, so are Sicilians, so are Maltese. That doesn't mean they're going to score worse than Kelly. So again, as Elhaik said, Kelly is confused. And I got to say that over and over again. Elhaik was right. Kelly is confused. But with that, let's jump to this next clip, this next section where we're going to discuss Kelly and Benayah's confusion about the significance of the Lemba.
Yeah.
And while you get that ready, what I'm going to ask viewers to note that they twice appealed to the Lemba in their video, right? Because they were thinking that getting a hit for Lemba on GEDMatch Oracle, emphasis on Oracle, they thought that should translate to them faring better than Ashkenazim on Elhaik's platform. That's what we're going to see in this compilation of a couple different clips. Okay.
Like, I know with my DNA and Benayah's DNA, and many of you, if you did your uploaded your results to GEDMatch, like, you're going to see that you're between 8 to 10%. I mean, 8 to 10 generations removed from the Lemba, right?
Just like Pastor Kelly was saying, you know, if the Lemba are closely related to somebody, then we too should be closely related to whoever the Lemba are closely related to, because we are closely related to the Lemba.
All right. Okay. All right. So There's a few different points there. I don't know if you want to say anything before I jump into explaining the confusion there, because I can think of 3 points of confusion there.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so saying that Kelly is confused, Elhaik was right. Kelly's confused, and we're going to touch on that. Benaya is confused as well. But here's 3 points that stand out for me. The first point, what excited people about the Lemba, this needs to be driven home. What excited people about the Lemba was some of their paternal lineages. It was the whole thing with the Cohen modal haplogroup, which pertains to paternal lineages, right? It was not their autosomal DNA. There's no reason to think that even the Lemba themselves would necessarily fare as well as Ashkenazim, much less, that they would fare significantly better than Ashkenazim on Elhaik's platform, and much less this idea that someone who connects to the Lemba on Oracle should fare better than Ashkenazim. Those ideas are baseless. The excitement about the Lemba had nothing to do with their autosomal DNA. It had to do with the paternal lineages of some of them, which is also going to be an issue in the next section. Okay, that's point 1. Point 2, scoring proximity to the Lemba on Oracle. I have to stress this, Oracle, right? That relates to a mathematical formula for how a person and the sample they're being compared to score in very broad categories, right? Like sub-Saharan African, right? And you see, they're referring to Oracle results, and Oracle results do not imply shared DNA, right? And we discussed this. This is discussed in a video on this channel, on Faithful's channel. That video is titled Hebrew Israelites Debunked GEDMatch Oracle and DNA Results. And that also will be in the description after the show. We'll put that in. But the gist of it is that Oracle results don't really imply shared DNA. So their connection to the Lemba being strictly an Oracle is irrelevant, and I've gotten into this. I have no Italian admixture, but I can connect to Italians on Oracle based on how I score in the broad categories of certain calculators, because I score similar to Italians. Like, for example, I have a large amount of European admixture and then some North African admixture, and so do Italians. And therefore, we line up. That mathematical proximity brings us close to each other, not based on shared DNA, based on how we're scoring in those categories, right? And so that's number 2. The third point, and this was for me the most egregious. Benaya committed the same fallacy that Kelly did, that we showed earlier, right? Benaya's exact words, if I can quote him, he said it right at the end of that compilation. Benaya said, quote, "If the Lemba are closely related to somebody, then we too should be closely related to whomever the Lemba are closely related to, because we are closely related to the Lemba." That's the same fallacy that Kelly committed. That's, again,
absurd.
to use that analogy, it's like saying I'm closely related to my first cousins who all have a large amount of Sicilian admixture, therefore I should have Sicilian admixture. Or because I'm closely related to first cousins who are closely related to Sicilians, then I should be closely related to the same Sicilians. It doesn't work that way, right? And so I'll put it this way. While we don't see any real grounds on which to conclude that Benaya and Kelly are, quote unquote, closely related to the Lemba, even if they were, hypothetically speaking, closely related to the Lemba, that would not translate to connection to the ancient Semites that many Lemba descend from, right? And that's why I was saying this takes us right back to that Sicilian and the Chinese analogy from earlier, right? Many Lemba could plausibly be a mix of ancient Semites and non-Semitic sub-Saharan Africans. And Kelly and Benaya, if they have proximity to them, might have proximity to them because of the latter, because of the sub-Saharan African admixture, right? Because that's basically what the Lemba look like. A certain percentage of them look like a population that came, genetically they look like this, like a population that came from somewhere like Yemen, a Semitic population that came down into Africa, kept heading south, and then mixed with local populations down there. So even if they do have some sort of proximity to the Lemba, like a mathematical proximity in Oracle, it's what they're connecting on is sub-Saharan African DNA, not the Semitic ancestry of many Lemba, right? So I just want to say this,
and if I could, but interestingly enough, J-carrying Ashkenazis, those who have the Cohen modal haplotype, they're testing probably closer to the Lembas than if we're going by this. By the way, just so we're clear on something, since they don't go with a patrilineal model, I'm saying this for those Hebrew Israelites that do. The Lembas that are testing J with the Cohen modal haplotype, they're paternally more closely related to those Ashkenazis that are also J with the Kohen modal
Mhm.
haplotype than they are to Benaya and Kelly, who are not J,
Exactly.
ironically enough. Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. But so let's just close out this section by saying this. Once again, Elhaik was right. Kelly is confused. And I'll add to that, so too, Benaya is confused. Elhaik was right about that.
And on that note, let's go
Yes.
ahead and bring out the 6th clip.
Yes, we're going to do this another compilation. And so while you're setting that up, what I'm going to ask the audience to do is as you listen. Oh, sorry. So as you listen to this clip that we're going to play, it's a compilation again. I want you to first note that before and after Benaya invoked the Lemba, because they invoked the Lemba twice in their show, both before and after, they appealed to haplogroup diversity amongst Ashkenazim to discredit and disqualify Ashkenazim from the, the so-called Israelite sweepstakes, if you will, right? So keep that in mind. They appealed to the Lemba, and now we're going to show clips of them appealing to haplogroup diversity to discredit Ashkenazim. And they did this twice. They did it before they invoked the Lemba, and they did it after they invoked the Lemba, right? And that's significant and we'll explain why in a moment, but this compilation is going to run for a little over a minute. All right, go ahead.
That was one of the arguments that I have to give him credit that Ron Dalton had brought up, and that was when you look at the DNA makeup of the present day Ashkenazi, and instead of everything tracing back to a single forefather, like in our case it will be Jacob, right? For Israel, everyone in the family should trace back to Jacob. If you're a genetic Israelite. But when they took a look at the makeup of the Ashkenazi, they were coming up with all these different haplogroups. In other words, there wasn't one shared progenitor, for all of them as far as a haplogroup. Even in that study that I was telling you about, there were multiple haplogroups in that cohort. So, to the question, and one is what you pointed out was, all these different haplogroups for Ashkenaz. The easy button answer is they can't be, can't be one. They can't be one people. One, because they're from different haplogroups. That's an easy button.
All right. All right. So, you want to say anything on that before I start sharing my thoughts?
Man, that's you first.
Okay, so I'll say this. First and foremost, I agree with Benaya that the Ashkenazim are patrilineally diverse. I've said this multiple times. Faithful has said this multiple times, both on this platform and on Clubhouse. The Ashkenazim are so patrilineally diverse that we can say a majority of them don't descend patrilineally from the biblical Jacob, right? But here's the thing. Here's why I pointed out that they said this both before and after they appealed to the Lemba. What I just said about the Ashkenazim is also true of the Lemba, right? The Lemba are also very diverse patrilineally. They have a range of haplogroups. So if patrilineal diversity disqualifies the Ashkenazim, so too it should disqualify the Lemba. And that would negate Kelly and Benayah's appeals to the Lemba, right? Now, note that, as we said earlier, haplogroups are irrelevant to the categories on Elhaik's platform, which are measuring autosomal DNA. So haplogroups are irrelevant to the discussion we were having, which pertained to them appealing to Elhaik's platform and, setting up this new standard, and the Ashkenazim were faring better than they were, right? But now they want to go back to haplogroups. But yeah, it's you can do this, but they're jumping from one foot to the next, and it's creating confusion, right? And then another point of confusion, and this, ironically, Kelly's own model also implies that haplogroup diversity is irrelevant, because he's telling his followers that even if they don't descend patrilineally from Jacob, that it's okay because God is going to, quote unquote, cleanse their blood. God's going to give them a spiritual or literal blood transfusion. He's going to fix their haplogroup. That's what Kelly's telling people. So if haplogroups and paternal lineages are actually irrelevant for Kelly's fans and supporters, then it raises the question, why wouldn't it be irrelevant for Ashkenazim as well, right? It's just so much confusion. And once again,
Yeah.
you know, Elhaik was right. Kelly's confused. And so is Benaya.
Absolutely. Like incredibly confused. Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. There's an inconsistency with these guys
Big time.
that I mean, going all the way back to our discussions on the pews and everything else, and it's no different when we've had conversations with them on DNA, on GEDMatch, and you've had various conversations with the Teo twins and others, and you know, of like-minded individuals on Berean TV, and it never seems to get through to them. It's like you can walk them through why the argument is bad, and they still don't seem to grasp why. Now, I wonder if it's a cognitive issue or if it's an emotional issue that's impeding on their better judgment, where they know that these are bad arguments, but they're still insisting upon them because they're emotionally attached to them, even if the arguments themselves are faulty or lacking in evidence or whatever the case may be. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, it shows a fogginess, and that's why I keep returning to the point that Elhaik said that Kelly's confused. He is confused, and I'm not even trying to be disrespectful, but we see that over and over again in Kelly and Benayah's attempts to sort of, respond to Elhaik's platform and discredit his platform and all this. You know, you could do that based on certain models, but the way they're going about it is terrible, and it's inconsistent, and it's confused. It's frankly confused. Elhaik was right. Kelly is confused. And
by the way,
say it about Benaya, I'll say it about Benaya. Benaya seems just as confused as Kelly was.
Yeah. And since we're bringing both of them up, and I was going to show this earlier, but I think it's appropriate to bring it out, and this is the thumbnail of this video, so
Yes.
I think it's appropriate. I think yeah. Our friends here. Oh no, this is the where's the one with the quote? I can't find it now. I'm trying to find the one with the quote. I got
that up. I'll say this. Basically, Kelly and Benaya and others, they promoted Elhaik's platform, and then when that didn't work out in their favor, they wanted to come against Elhaik, but their arguments were weak and ineffective, and that's what that image pretty much captures, in my opinion. You know, they were going up against somebody that I don't know, they're not really bringing anything of substance to that little wooden sword fight of sorts. You know, that de facto joust.
Yeah, the one that they're losing.
Yeah, well, clearly, I mean, it's just bad. Like, for anyone who understands the arguments, their arguments are terrible. You know,
no, it's insanity. I do have to say. And by the way, this is the image right here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This is.
I think this summarizes how we all feel. How we all feel about the reasoning.
Yeah, the conflict between these two.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there it is.
They're trying to take on this giant, and they're falling short. And he just keeps saying to them, I'm sorry that you're still confused.
I'm sorry that you're so confused. That's right. Yeah, it's insanity.
That was fun. That's a lot of fun, and I'm glad that's the screen tile for the video. That's a funny choice you made.
So, with that being said, let's go ahead and move
to the last section. Yeah, to GEDMatch.
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, there will be links to all of this in the description. So for those who are interested in exploring this topic a little bit more, there will be links so that you guys can, go into and explore some of the things that we've already covered in the past on the topic of GEDMatch, for example. For those of you who may not be familiar, GEDMatch Oracle is a specific calculator that's utilized by the GEDMatch website. Could you, again, just for the people who are coming in now, explain very briefly how GEDMatch Oracle works, how,
Sure. So, and there's a video on Faithful's channel that covers this. Just put GEDMatch or Oracle into the search on Faithful's channel and you'll get it. But the way GEDMatch Oracle works. So, and I got to put emphasis on Oracle. It's like the next step down. There's GEDMatch proper, and then there's Oracle. And we're going to get into this a little bit more after this compilation we're going to show. But basically, Oracle has very broad categories. There's a bunch of different calculators, and each calculator will have broad categories like, sub-Saharan African, European, stuff like that, right? And how you score in those categories is then compared mathematically to how their samples scored, right? And then they give you these numbers, and the numbers are merely a mathematical formula regarding how close your scores were to the scores of the sample. So I've given this analogy before. This is a fact. I don't have any Italian admixture, but on GEDMatch Oracle, I get like Southern Italian. And the reason why is because I have a mix of European and North African, and their Italian samples have the same. And then that's why we wind up being close together, right? So Oracle has nothing to do with shared DNA. It's merely a mathematical formula. But they're going to try to appeal to GEDMatch. They just say GEDMatch, but what they really mean is GEDMatch Oracle, and they're going to try and use it as the counterweight to Elhaik's platform. So we'll take a look at this, and then we're going to discuss it.
All righty. Let me actually... Here it is, and here we go.
And then of course GEDMatch came out. We did the GEDMatch for us, uploaded our results from Ancestry.com to N23andMe there. And that's when we saw the connection to the Lemba, and you guys already know about the Lemba. Like I know with my DNA and Benayah's DNA, and many of you, if you did your uploaded your results to GEDMatch, like you're going to see that you're between 8 to 10%. I mean, 8 to 10 generations removed from the Lemba, right? But we go to a tool called GEDMatch, and GEDMatch makes the connection, and also My True Ancestries makes the connection, showing us that we're in between 5 to 10 generations. Now, I know mine's on My True Ancestry is 5%, just over 5%, 5 generations. On GEDMatch, it's been fluctuating between 8 to 9%, or 9 generations. But guess what? That means no matter what, our DNA results is going to be higher than the Ashkenazi Jewish community, the European Jews.
Woo! Oh man. That last
That's rough. Yeah,
So did you hear that last line? We'll get to it in a moment. But that last line, he said right at the end, guess what? That means no matter what, our DNA results is going to be higher than the Ashkenazi Jewish community. That's what he said. And we're going to get to that in a moment. You have anything to say before I jump into my thoughts on this?
So this is like a proverbial cornucopia of confusion.
Yes.
If I could, just one more time. I know we showed it earlier. I'm going to just show it now. These are our thoughts right now. This is how you and I feel. This is exactly how we feel right now. This right here. This is.
In fact, just leave that on the screen. I would say leave it on the screen. Make it bigger and leave it on the screen. Go full screen with that.
Yeah, that's for the record, we want to be charitable, but
it tests charity. It really does test charity.
It's like, what do you say to that? I mean, what do you?
I have some thoughts.
Yes, please share your thoughts.
Okay, first and foremost, this is going to overlap with what I said before we played the compilation. Kelly claimed that his Oracle results show how many generations removed he is from the Lemba, right? That is nonsense. That's something they've been saying since like 2020 or 2021, right? The numbers given alongside Oracle results, they're not measuring generations. They're merely giving a mathematical distance between one's own scores in certain broad categories and the relevant samples scores in those same categories, right? It has nothing to do with generations, right? And again, this is discussed in a video on this channel titled Hebrew Israelites Debunk, GEDMatch, Oracle, and DNA Results. You can check that out. After the show, we're going to put it in the description. We're going to link to it in the description, right? So right away, him saying, oh, and we're like 8 generations removed from the Lemba. We're 5 generations removed from the Lemba. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, you might have 80% sub-Saharan African, and a Lemba sample might have 80% sub-Saharan African. So you have a short mathematical distance between those two on those broad categories. But aside from that, I want to return to what we highlighted right at the end, right after the clip ended, which is what he said right at the end. He said that this is Kelly. Kelly said, quote, guess what? That means no matter what, our DNA results is going to be higher than the Ashkenazi Jewish community, end quote. That's what he said. He just threw that claim out there without giving any reason, why someone should think it's true. And it's a repetition of a fallacy that we covered twice before. This idea that, I think Lemba are Israelites and I got a connection to them, so therefore I should be scoring higher in Israelite category than Ashkenazi Jews. No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that at all. And we don't even have reason to think that necessarily Lemba would score significantly higher than Ashkenazi Jews on Elhaik's platform, right? But ironically, GEDMatch itself, contrary to what Kelly was saying, GEDMatch itself proves Kelly wrong, right? While he tried to use GEDMatch as a counterweight against Elhaik's platform, those two sources, GEDMatch and Elhaik's platform, actually agree with each other. You see, there's a calculator on GEDMatch called the Ancient Eurasia K6 calculator. It's under the Jedrosia platform, right? And that calculator has a Natufian category. And I'm going to say this, about this. We have good reason to think that Kelly scored very low in the Natufian category, below 5%, in fact. While Ashkenazim, when they take that test, they're typically scoring 30, 40, even 50% or higher in that Natufian category on GEDMatch. And I mentioned that to say this. On both Elhaik's platform and GEDMatch, Ashkenazim score significantly higher than Kelly and many other African Americans. So GEDMatch is not a counterweight to Elhaik's platform, right? It actually agrees with Elhaik's platform. And I want to say something because I know that emotions run high in these conversations and people confuse themselves. And so some are going to think that this might be some sort of a quote unquote racial or morphological thing. So I want to point out something that's interesting. As we alluded to earlier, Europe is a diverse place. So how a Mediterranean population scores is going to be different from how like Northwest Europeans, like, Scandinavians might score. Same thing with Asia. Asia is a diverse place. So how, like, let's say Yemenis will score can be different, or Saudis will score, or Iraqis will score, is going to be different from how, let's say, Filipinos or Taiwanese might score, right? And so too with Africa, how people from West Africa score can differ from how people from East Africa score. And I want to mention this because right before we went on, about a half hour before, I was conversing with a deacon on Twitter, a deacon in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church who I follow on Twitter and YouTube. He's the host of the Philosophy of Art and Science podcast that I really like. An Ethiopian gentleman, Amhara gentleman, and he shared his score on the Natufian category. He got 46% on that calculator, measuring his, how much admixture falls into the Natufian category. 46%. This is an Ethiopian, an Amhara. So while someone like Kelly, we have reason to think got way below, got single digit scores below even 5%. There are others on the other side of the continent, in East Africa, especially Semitic East Africans like Amhara, who are getting very high scores in that Natufian category. So this has nothing to do with outward appearance. It has nothing to do with skin tone or hair texture or quote unquote race or morphology or any of that, right? The autosomal DNA is much more complex, but both Ashkenazim and Semitic Ethiopians are scoring high in that Natufian category. And as I said, if Kelly was honest, he should show his results, how he did on that Natufian category. But we have good reason to believe that he scored very low. And so just as he did poorly on Elhaik's platform, he does poorly on GEDMatch. And by GEDMatch, I mean GEDMatch proper, that Natufian category. So GEDMatch and Elhaik's platform agree. Ashkenazim are far closer to ancient Levantine samples than Kelly is. But go ahead, share your thoughts.
And so, let's actually bring up the summary. Let's actually...
Okay. Well, before we get to the summary, let me just say once again, Elhaik was right. Kelly is confused. I meant to say that.
Very much.
All right. You want to read through the summary? Or I can
Sure.
do it.
So,
Yeah, you can.
no, I'll do it. So, here's the summary. Number one, Kelly and Benayah committed the same fallacy, insinuating that if they have any genetic proximity to an individual, then they should have everything that individual has. But that is not how genetics works. Second point, Kelly and Benayah tried to appeal the Lemba, while also trying to disqualify the Ashkenazim because of their haplogroup diversity. However, the Lemba have a similar level of haplogroup diversity, so if that disqualifies the Ashkenazim, then so too it should disqualify the Lemba. Not to mention, you have members within the diverse Lemba group that themselves are genetically perhaps even related in some capacity to Ashkenazim via the shared J haplogroup, the Cohen modal haplotype.
Yeah.
All right. So number 3, Kelly tried to present GEDMatch as a counterweight to Elhaik's platform, but he doesn't understand how Oracle actually works. The reality is that GEDMatch proper would produce similar results to Elhaik's platform, which is to say Ashkenazim would outscore Kelly on both. Conclusion. Elhaik was right. Kelly is confused. Moreover, the real problem continues to be Kelly's uneven scales and inconsistent standards.
100%. And that also applies to Benaya. And as far as I'm concerned, that sums it up.
So I do want to say this. Absolutely, Lauren. Yeah, I think we can agree. I think Richard Katz and David Boonis would agree too, right? Well, more so David Boonis than Richard Katz, because Richard Katz is really William Brown. But anyways. So on that
Richard
note,
Katz is the one Ashkenazi who got 0% on the Israelite category on Elhaik's platform.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think he's Ashkenazi.
Yeah, there you go.
His name is
William Katz. That's all I'll say about that. William Katz. Inside joke. William Katz. All right. So on that note, we appreciate all of you for coming on through. The links will be in the description. Apologies for some of the unevenness on my end in this live stream. It's been a while. It's been a few months. And it seems that they changed the interface inside of StreamYard. So I'm still trying to get used to it a little bit. But moving forward, the live streams will be a lot more cohesive, hopefully. And of course, I'll continue to be doing live streams with my friend. And whenever our interesting friends over there on the We Woke Now channel and Benaya Israel's YouTube channel continue to produce interesting content, we'll give interesting commentary.
Yeah, and there might be some shows on the horizon. This is just an idea. I don't know if we'll do a show on this. This is just an idea. I didn't even discuss this with Faithful, but one interesting storyline is Kelly tried to appeal to ChatGPT to make a new case for him being an Israelite, and it was just completely, obviously fraud. He obviously gave it prompts to work in his favor because ChatGPT was even using Lashon Kodash. It was preposterous. But who destroyed Kelly on that topic? Ironically enough, the Teo twins. So we might review that. We might review Teo's destruction of Kelly's, ChatGPT fraud. They did a great job of dismantling that in a community post. Maybe we'll cover that. That's one idea. We got other ideas. Stay tuned.
Pseudo on pseudo. That's interesting. Well, on that note, we appreciate all of you. God bless you all. For anybody who watches this in the future, of course, if you want to donate anything, the Cash App is there. You're not obligated to do so, but whatever you decide to give is more than welcome over here. And on that note, I appreciate my friend Abu for coming on through and sharing all of this interesting information about our interesting friends. And hopefully you guys will check out the links that will be in the description after this live stream ends. So Abu, thank you so much for coming on through, and I think we'll end it here. God bless you all. I hope this has edified someone out there. And until next time, take care. God bless you all. Keep Kelly and Benaya in prayer. God bless 100%. You guys. God bless, guys.